Hi guys, it's Willow, and today I wanted to try something new. I've been talking about doing a creative writing segment on this channel for a while now. I figured now was a perfectly good time to start. I took a creative writing class in high school and I really loved it, and I thought it would be cool to be able to bring that to other people that don't have that class at their school or are not in school and just want to learn how to write better. I actually still have my spiral from it. I actually really love to write, especially fantasy stories and things like that. I was very into vampires in middle school, which is when I started writing. And so all my books used to be about vampires. And I've been making stories up since I was a little kid. Like, my favorite thing to do was play Barbies and have the dramatic storyline. In middle school it became sort of an escape from anything that was bugging me, and it was a way to have my own little world wherever I went, and I could just get lost in it and not have to think about things I didn't want to think about. So it's really something I love to do. But I do have a big problem with staying committed to one story at a time. I tend to get an idea for another one and I'll forget the one that I was working on to start working on that, and then I'll get another idea, and I don't think I've ever finished a book except for one time when I was in middle school, and it was not good. I'm not sure how long this is going to be. It just depends on how long it takes me to get through all the things that I want to say in this video. So we'll see. I want to do more short-term exercises like writing prompts and different techniques to writing, and then also have a long-term project that we do together, like we can each write a novel or a book or a collection of short stories if that's what you want to do. But I'm going to be focusing our long-term project on what you would be doing if you were writing a novel. And I thought the best way to get us set up with it was to start with an outline. Before I get into all the things I have to say about outlines, I thought it would be good to ask yourself a couple of good key questions to have in mind when writing your outline. And if I'm looking down, it's because I wrote down all the things that I researched, so I'm checking that as I'm going along. The first question is, who is your antagonist? And that can be as simple as a general idea of who they are and their name and all of that. The second one is an important one to decide before you start writing, and it is, what point of view are you going to be writing in? There are lots of different point of views, and they say the hardest one is first person because you have such a narrow field to be creative in. If you're writing in first person, you don't know what these other characters are doing off scene when your character isn't there. So when you write in third person, you open up more avenues to write. I think I tend to write in first person myself, and I don't know why that is. I may start trying to write in third person more. Then, what is your character's main motivation or goal? And that's really just to be able to drive the plot further so that it's not sort of meandering, because if they have a goal, they know what they're going to accomplish in your story. What are the main obstacles or challenges that are keeping them from achieving their goal? And do you want to have any subplots? Like, if you're going to have an action book or a fantasy book, do you want there to be a subplot like how Lord of the Rings splits off and follows different characters around, or if you want there to be a romance on the back burner, or if you want the romance to be on the front burner and then the struggles that they're going through to be the subplot. Depends on what kind of book you're writing. And do you have a lesson or a message that you want to convey? So, in other words, do you have a theme to it? Do you want your readers to walk away thinking about something? And a reason why that's important to keep in mind is because you want your book to illustrate that and show that instead of just straight up telling them. And do you have a beginning and ending in mind? It is not necessary to have either or in mind, but it is a good way to jump off, and a lot of the outlines I'm going to go over require you to have one or the other. And there are a lot of different ways to outline a story, and I've researched a little bit and found about 6 examples that I can give to you guys today. But in the end, it's really just about finding what works for you, what allows you to be creative. Because at the end of the day, that's what's most important. The first one that I found is called a synopsis outline. A synopsis outline is usually about a medium amount of in-depth, and it's about 1 or 2 pages of details going through details of the major plot lines, and you just highlight the major points. You would start off with the inciting incident and the setup, and you would go through the major plot points up to the climax and then the resolution. You don't have to add too much detail to them. It's mainly about just getting them down. The second kind is an in-depth outline. You can make it as long as you want, and you just go chapter by chapter or scene by scene and say exactly what you want to happen in each one. So you would go chapter 1, I want to set up who the character is, and then chapter 2, I want the plot to begin, and this is how I'm going to make it begin. Thirdly is the snowflake method, and it is you start with your general idea and what you want the plot to be in the middle, and then you branch off into different directions with different things that can happen and different characters and places and events that are going to happen, and just sort of build a world around it. Sort of like what I think J.R.R. Tolkien did when he set up all his maps and his languages and his different characters and their backstories, and that's sort of what that style is. And then you have the bookend method. In the bookend method, you start with the beginning and the end, and as you go along, you highlight what you want to happen. And you have a lot of creative freedom with this way. My cat has come to say hello. Sorry about that, I had to kick the cat out because he would not leave me alone and he was digging his claws into my lap. But as I was saying, the bookend method is when you start with your beginning and your end and you fill in the details along the way. It gives you a lot of creative freedom because you can change things and make things up as you go and add in different details. And the middle part isn't totally required, but suggested. The reverse outlining method is pretty self-explanatory. You start with the end and you work your way backwards. Some people start with the end and then start writing and work their way towards it, and other people do the whole thing just in reverse before they start writing. Lastly, we have the skeletal outline, and it's the one that you probably learned in school. I know that it's the one that they made me use all the time in school, and I actually hated this. It's the one that's shaped like a graph, and I drew it for you guys. That's it right there. You start with the exposition and write that down right there, a couple lines. Then the inciting incident and a couple lines about that. And then going up, you do all the rising actions and a little detail about them. At the top, you have the climax, a couple lines about what happens there. The falling action with a couple lines, and then the resolution. And it's pretty basic, but it does give you a good understanding about how story structure usually works. It paints a pretty good, clear picture of the story. And if you already know that one, then it's perfectly fine to use it, and you'll just have that leg up in that. No, it's a lot to take in, but that's what I could find for you guys. I think whenever you're being creative and doing art forms like this, it's totally fine to mix and match and find what works best for you. Maybe you can use part of this and then put your own spin on it and just figure out what works so that you can still be creative in an organized way. A lot of people don't use any outlining, they just let it go as it goes, which I am very guilty of. But I find that when I do that, I end up not really knowing where I'm going and trying to figure out what I was going to go for, and is a big factor in me quitting a lot of my projects. And I think when you get that writer's block, it helps to have sort of an idea of what you're doing and what you're supposed to be writing. Let me know if you have any methods that I missed in my research that you use. For our next lesson, I'm planning on doing a character outlining for your main characters and even some of your sub-characters, which I think is also important because strong characters can really make or break a book. As you can see, I have a new background. I ordered 3 and asked you guys which ones you liked the best, and most people picked this one, so I figured I would at least start with this one. I may sort of cycle through the different ones that I got. If you're going to be doing this project with me, let me know, and If you feel like it, you can write what you're planning on doing for your book down below. But if somebody does and decide to share in my creative writing classes, I would ask that you are respectful of their ideas no matter what you think of them, and if you're going to criticize them, make sure it's in a constructive way. So no, that story sucks. If you think a story sucks, tell them, well, I think that's a little overdone, maybe you could change it in this way, or maybe when you're writing it you could write it in this way so that it's more fresh and unique, instead of just crapping on people's ideas. So that is your homework for the week, is to fill out a outline for your novel. I'm going to be doing that myself because, like I said, I really think that this is going to help me stay on track with writing. And I think it's fun to be able to do it with your friends. I'm actually really excited for this. I've been looking forward to doing this, and that's why it took me so long to start. It's because I wanted to sort of get good ideas in my head before I started. Let me know if you enjoyed this, and if you want me to continue doing these segments, or if it's not something you guys are very interested in. I always have a lot of fun making these for you guys, and I love to see you commenting and liking and subscribing, and every time I get a new subscriber, it makes me over the moon with joy. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that. You can also add me on Instagram and Twitter. I should have those linked down below, but they're also on my channel page. I really look forward to seeing what we can come up with together, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.